Almost every home in North America is surrounded by a functioning system of life. It's part of our leasehold, a tenancy in common with fellow members of the society of life. We can ignore it, although that takes considerable effort, or we can enjoy it. Better still, we can participate in it. We in North America are learning to participate. We're learning from our children of the need to walk gently on the earth.
The birds ate it all. The Cardinals ate it all.
We're coming to understand why Chief Seattle of the Northwest Nations said, "The earth does not belong to man. Man belongs to the earth." This enhanced awareness is a rather new enrichment for us, an avenue to the attitudes and understandings we will need in the coming century. The cardinal is a rallying point, an emblem of our bond with nature, for it is familiar to practically everyone in North America. The cardinal has helped show us why we must make peace with the earth, for the cardinal is something we could not bear to lose. Each of us has a scale to measure values of the heart and spirit. But collectively, for better or worse, we measure in economic terms. Even on that scale, the cardinal is a heavyweight, for the appeal mainly of this bird drives an industry on which we Americans spend more than $1 billion yearly feeding wild birds. More than 1/3 of all Americans feed the birds. It's a gesture, something each of us can do to acknowledge that we too participate in a system of life. There's one group of birds we come especially close to in winter. No single term unifies them all. Some are called finches, some grosbeaks, sparrows, buntings, juncos. But they have in common the conical bill designed for cracking seeds. These birds come in many shapes and sizes. Some live high in the trees, some on the ground. Some are drab, some bright. Some sing well, others buzz or chip. One among them does it all. We call the bird the Northern Cardinal. The cardinal is one of our best-known and best-loved birds. Yet there's still a great deal for us to learn about this fiery singer in our backyard. I'm Michael Godfrey, inviting you on a special visit of discovery with our cardinals up close. Ecologically, the Northern Cardinal is a generalist whose tastes favor just about every change man is likely to make upon the landscape, except for pavement. The cardinal may be found in forests, but more likely along the edges than deep within. Hedgerows are admirable wild habitat for the cardinal. They offer the essential cover adjacent to open spaces where light shines and plants grow to make seeds and fruits and to support insects. One of America's first observers of the habitat choices of our fiery songster was the young French emigrant Jean-Jacques Fougère Audubon.
This fine songster relishes the heart of the deepest canebrakes or retired swamps, as well as the neighborhood of cities. It is constantly found in our fields, orchards, and gardens. Nay, it often enters the very streets of our southern towns and villages to breed. And it is rare that one goes into a planter's yard without observing the redbird skipping about the trees or on the turf beneath them. Go where it may, it is always welcome and is everywhere a favorite. So rich is its song and so brilliant is its plumage.
Probably the ideal wild neighborhood for cardinal families is an old field passing through the first stages of reforestation. In effect, an overgrown old field is an extended hedgerow with young pines and cedars and deciduous saplings interspersed with briars and berry bushes and honeysuckle thickets. There's always cover within a few wing beats, and there's food in abundance. Food for a cardinal is hard to avoid, for a gracious harvest of seeds, berries, buds, and new shoots is available much of the year. The leaf litter harbors grubs and seeds. The hedgerows and brushy places and saplings of abandoned fields abound in insects, particularly the caterpillars so prized as food for the young. Open spaces offer the seeds and attendant insects of grasses and the plants we call weeds. As the sun tracks higher each day in spring, it warms the northern hemisphere in fits and starts, thawing, lapsing again to cold. The birds do respond to late winter warmth to sing on sunny days that anticipate the season. but their inclination to song and to the other parts of the reproductive cycle depend more on the steadily lengthening days than on temperature. It is the increase in day length that swells the avian gonads and triggers a flood of reproductive hormones. Once the days reach a critical length, singing, territorial combat, mating, and nesting follow, regardless of weather. As with most birds, the cardinal's first order of business in the nesting cycle is territory. Each male stakes a claim. The older, stronger, more experienced males lay claim to the better territories. Of course, claiming is one thing, enforcement is another. How keen the observation must be to differentiate the quality of shrubs, trees, multiflora rows, and honeysuckle thickets, for to us one is pretty much like another. One of the most obvious signs of early spring is the lacing of male cardinals through the prime territories, the chasing, testing, contesting of will and resolve. Each claim is subjected to incessant dispute by neighbors envious of the cover, the food source. Males take high perches to make their territorial pronouncements, but otherwise cardinals spend most of their time on or near the ground. They need low, thick shrubs which are opaque to outside view and which protect from their nemesis, the sharp-shinned hawk. In sum, trees are good, shrubs are essential. There are cultivated hollies that serve well. In fact, there are numerous shrubs used in foundations, hedging, and landscaping which give the year-round, opaque, perhaps fortified protection the cardinals appreciate. The Japanese honeysuckle vine, anathema on the manicured lawn, has been especially helpful to cardinals. A related honeysuckle, but a shrub rather than a vine and not nearly so aggressive, is known by the rather saccharine term sweet breath of spring. In early spring, while winter still holds the high ground, the fragrance is intoxicating, which may have something to do with the shrub's botanical name, Lonicera fragrantissima. As the weather warms, the fruits develop, fleshy, translucent red morsels which draw birds from the next block. The northern mockingbird is resident curmudgeon, sure to defend such an important food source within its territory. But the mocker claims more treasure than it can guard. Shy and secretive, the cardinal feeds mid-bush. The onset of song by the female marks the beginning of the nesting cycle. She has found a territory that suits her, and she accepts the squire in residence. The functional edge to the female's part of this tandem song is a warning to other females that the territory from which the duet comes is occupied. But the romance in the voice is equally clear. Into a cup of twigs and stiff grasses, the female laces a lining of soft strips of the bark of the eastern red cedar, actually a juniper. Flat and pliant, the cedar bark will stay the winds of spring. Soft grasses finish the bedding. On the morning of her choosing, the female visits for a special purpose. She settles in, tests the structure. In a few minutes, her tail begins to pulse. She will lay 2 to 5 eggs, one each morning, and will begin to incubate at the time she lays the next to last egg. The unavoidable conclusion is that she knows in advance how many eggs she will lay. For the first 2 or 3 days, she leaves the nest only occasionally and then only briefly. Given the devotion between the pair, she has little need to leave. The birds are in constant contact, the male in adoring attendance. Absolved of the need to forage, she starts the sequence of embryonic development with an initial burst of body heat. As incubation progresses, the female is more at liberty. At first, the male sings, calling her off the nest with food, which she takes and quickly returns. A week into incubation, and depending on the weather, she may spend only half the daylight hours on the eggs. The rest she spends with her mate, who considers it his duty not only to lead her to good forage, but to shell it and place it in her mouth. This gesture of endearment between bonded cardinals keeps sunflower seed in many feeders even after winter has passed. This is where the female goes when she takes an incubation break. Cardinals are a 20th century phenomenon in Michigan. They were first seen in Detroit in the 1930s, and the northbound pioneers made it to Traverse City by 1980. In the spring of 1989, the first cardinal was recorded at the Bird Observatory at Whitefish Point, in the extreme north of Michigan's Upper Peninsula. Cardinals are recent enough emigrants in Michigan to draw the special feelings of a new gift. At the Surrett Nature Center, Benton Harbor, Director Chuck Nelson shares his cardinals with visitors.
The male cardinal is on the end there, bright red. It just is a very, very pretty bird. About the brightest thing that we've got around here. And comes a female right next to it now. And, oh, you look at that, he's going to feed her. Boy, oh boy, spring is in the air when that happens.
What do I do? Oh, patience, first of all. I don't know.
Judy Barrett is one of the new cardinal enthusiasts in northern Michigan. Judy has a special vantage from which to observe the birds advance in Michigan because she owns a bird supply store in Traverse City and another in Leland, an attractive village to the north.
South, or even just 100 miles south, there's a lot more cardinals, and they slowly are expanding their range, habitat changes, and bird feeding. They're a human backyard friendly type bird, and their range is expanding northward, but we don't have a lot yet, so don't be disappointed. However, to maximize your chances, they're happy on the ground, and so we're sort of imitating the ground and putting them up higher. And so you need a large feeder, a platform type feeder, something with a ledge, something with a large area. They don't come real comfortably to tiny little swinging perches. A squirrel-proof feeder is fine. We have some great metal ones that the squirrels can't get in, the larger birds can't feed at. or the blackbirds, but you can entrap the cardinals. Another thing to think about is the kind of seed. They're great sunflower feeders. We like the black oil sunflower seed. It's been developed for bird feeding. It's a more nutritious seed. And safflower also, if you have problems with a lot of squirrels or blackbirds, cardinals will get used to it and love it. So feed with sunflower and or safflower seed. Feed in a large stable type feeder, not a swinging, and be patient. And the day they come will make your day.
The enthusiasm for cardinals sweeping northern Michigan may explain a puzzle. The Northern Cardinal is the official state bird of 7 states. Not only have more states adopted the cardinal than any other bird, but those that have form a belt across the country's midsection from the Atlantic coast to the Mississippi River. An unlikely coincidence. This clustering of cardinal states may be part of the story of America. Sometime in the 1830s, John James Audubon recorded the range of the bird he called Virginia nightingale and cardinal grosbeak.
It is very abundant in all our southern states as well as in the peninsula of the Floridas. In the western country, a great number are found as far up on the Ohio as the city of Cincinnati.
Within a century, the cardinal's range would encompass the next tier of states to the north, and the delighted citizens quickly would claim the newcomer as their state's emblem. States still to be colonized ultimately would not follow suit. Those to the south never went through a period of newness and excitement about the cardinal. It had always been a theme in the southern ambience. Ken Kaufman, naturalist and author of Field Guide to Advanced Birding, suggests a dynamic which might drive birds to expand their range.
A healthy wild bird population is normally going to expand its range out until it comes to some sort of barrier, and the barrier could be something really obvious, like it comes to the edge of the right kind of habitat. A forest bird is going to stop when it reaches the edge of the prairie or when it reaches the ocean, for example. But often the barrier is going to be something more subtle, like a slight shift in habitat or climate that isn't really apparent to us. With cardinals in eastern North America, the northern limit seems to be related to winter temperatures. But cardinals have been gradually spreading northward for the last 100 years or so. And there are probably 3 factors involved in that. One is the presence of all those bird feeders, helping the cardinals, just giving them a little bit of edge for getting through a cold spell during the winter. Second factor is that there's probably some evolution going on at the northern limit. There's selection for the individuals that are better able to withstand the cold temperatures. And possibly a third factor is that the climate may be warming up slightly. A number of southern birds are expanding northward: Carolina wrens, mockingbirds, blue grosbeaks, summer tanagers. And there's hardly any movement the opposite direction, hardly any northern birds that are expanding their ranges south.
If the cardinal is, or was, basically a southern bird, why do ornithologists include northern in its name? Let's ask ornithologist Susan Roney Drennan.
There are a lot of other birds, maybe 7 or 8 species of tropical birds called cardinals. And they aren't very closely related to the northern cardinal, but in fact, they belong more to the subfamily of the Brazilian cardinal. But basically and simply, the reason that it's called the Northern Cardinal is in fact because it is the most northern of all the cardinals.
While some pioneer cardinals seem to be headed for the northern limits of the range of man himself, others move west. With the recovery of the Great Plains from the ravages of drought and bad farming, many trees and shrubs green the land, particularly near the homes of people. Across the prairie states, the cardinal is now neighbors with the plainsmen, and with such birds as the lazuli bunting. The cardinal reaches even into the southwestern deserts to sing, as it does everywhere, in regional dialect, and to share in one of North America's most fascinating systems of life. In the deserts of the Southwest, a special song rings in the clear air. The official name of this bird is Piruloxia, but it is known locally by the more descriptive desert cardinal. Although it does not call the cardinal state bird, Arizona might be called the cardinal capital of North America, for the arid scrublands are home to two cardinal species, the northern cardinal and the Piruloxia. No matter how much we learn about this bird, there are always surprises for the cardinal watcher. Most cardinal songs are limited to a few phrases, but a bright spring day may bring on an astonishing display of lung power. A few days later, the same voluble soloist displays the cardinal weakness for contemplative sunning. We think of the cardinal as a ground-feeding bird, but it can hawk insects from the air like a flycatcher. Perhaps the behavior that observers find most remarkable is the offense cardinals take at their own reflections. Expanses of plate glass not protected by netting claim the lives of countless birds who mistake them for clear passage. They also bring out the pugnacious side of the cardinal personality, females as well as males. The cardinal does not migrate. It's under our watchful protection all year. But most of the other colorful birds that sing in our forests are migrants from the tropics. They live high in the canopy eating caterpillars. They do not come to feeders. They may travel thousands of miles to raise but a single brood in our forests, then return to spend the majority of the year in the tropics. These forest migrants are in accelerating decline. That includes most of the warblers, the vireos, the flycatchers, the thrushes, the cuckoos, the tanagers, and the orioles. The majority of our forest birds. Research shows a frightening reduction in their numbers, 50% since 1970. Under current projections, the tropical forests of South and Central America will be effectively destroyed in another 4 decades, and with the forests, into the silence of history will go our forest birds. American Birds is the National Audubon Society's magazine for serious birders. As editor of American Birds, Susan Drennan is aware of the problems we face in bringing a halt to the destruction of the Earth's ability to carry life. Under Susan's leadership, the National Audubon Society has launched a major program to conserve the migratory birds of the Western Hemisphere. It's called Wings Over the Americas.
We are going to find those hot spots, both in Central and North America, link those up and save that habitat, because when people want to save birds, what they're really talking about is saving habitat.
The goal is to make everyone aware of the threat of deforestation, north and south, to our birds. The U.S. government's awareness and determination will be critical, as Susan reflects on a windy day in Washington.
People say and act as if the United States government is the most responsive government in the whole world to the needs of its people. But if that's true, clearly, we haven't let the government even know what it is that we want. We haven't given them a mandate to take care of the environment. Even as we're speaking, the United States government, and only the United States government, has refused to unify with all the rest of humanity in preserving species diversity. We must not have told the government what it is that we wanted. We don't bother telling them that our migratory birds are in serious, serious trouble. And that they have to take the initiative in doing something for our migratory birds.
"12 days after the beginning of incubation, there's joy in the Cardinal household. The mother sings, and the father visits with the first meal. On the day of hatching, he will make several visits with food for the mother to pass on. But the natal visit is the one steeped in the ceremony of welcome. On the next day, the male makes his first solo visit with food. His voice touches the new ones and passes on to them the sacred songs, which they will keep unsung until the following spring. This is a process called imprinting, the crux of learning to be a cardinal, and it is essential that the songs be among the first perceptions of hatchling cardinals. The new father makes another statement, a single feeding note to the blind and helpless young. Later, we come to understand that unique note given only by the male to mean the coast is clear. His bright colors have not attracted a predator, and the hatchlings may feed in safety. But until they hear that note, they are to lie motionless in the nest. The young cardinals develop with amazing speed. On the 8th day, they leave the nest. They don't jump or fall from it. They fly into the world, usually to a perch higher than the nest, to which they'll never return. The cardinal nesting cycle is not only quick, it's early. By the blooming of the dogwoods, the first brood may be off and begging. The male shifts into high gear, for the feeding of the fledglings soon becomes his duty as the female starts a second nest. In the southern heartland of the traditional range, she may even build a third. May, June, and July are full of young cardinals quivering to be fed, presenting summer-long opportunities to see the birds at all stages of development. About 12 weeks after fledging, the young start to molt the feathers in which they left the nest, and the colors of their gender begin to show. The harvest season presents new foods for the rapidly maturing cardinals. The dogwood flowers surrounding this young female when she left the nest mature to the berries which sustain her into the cold to come. The cardinal's world is our world, and our lives interlock. We share a landscape and a future as bright as we are wise. The clear song calls us to our common bond with the land.